Hey, good day, everybody. Welcome back to Rocky Mountain Readings, where we have been reading deeply into the new book, A Jewish Guide to the Mysterious by Rabbi Pinhas Taylor of Plantation, Florida. Now, this has been kind of interesting and revealing all at once. We're learning all kinds of different topics, some more mainstream and some not. Today, we got a really unique topic on golems. Yesterday, we read on extraterrestrial life. I thought Rabbi Taylor did a good job to bring to light the Torah perspective on the matter. You can always refer to yesterday's reading if you want to hear about what Rabbi Taylor had to say on that matter. But today, we're going to be reading about golems. So if you're not familiar with what a golem is, I know in popular literature, the Lord of the Rings series, they had a character called the Golem, and you got to see that it comes from some original notions, but as always, we're going to read right from the book, hence Rocky Mountain Reading. So we're hoping you're enjoying this, because after today, we'll be turning a page into the next of his 5 sections will be on the mysterious soul, which deals with the soul immortality and the afterlife, which I'm sure everybody wants to know about. He's got a chapter on near-death experiences and reincarnation. It's always going to be a joy to hear what the Jewish sages have to say on those matters. And then we get into a different one. Well, we'll go step by step. Hopefully you guys are enjoying it. Jay Vinston, good to have you with us. The sound of the music is overwhelming to your voice. I don't have any music on at the moment. Can you still hear music? You shouldn't. At first, yeah. Let me go down here. Here, the music should be right off. Is that no music? Yeah, I've got it eliminated from this scene. So it should be better. Should solve the job. So let's just jump right into golems. In Jewish literature, a golem is a being that is created by other human beings out of inanimate matter. A golem is a body, a fully functioning human form, but it lacks the ability to speak and it does not have a soul. The word golem appears in the book of Psalms in 139:16. The Mishnah also uses the term to describe an unrefined or uncultivated person in Avos 5:6. The term golem, as it is used in modern parlance to describe a humanoid created through mystical means by certain pious individuals, was introduced in the 12th century. Traditionally, these golems were created in order to be helpful in personal tasks or communal protection. Wonder if that would apply to robots. The Talmud says that a biblical Adam was initially created as a golem, or shapeless husk, before becoming a complete human being with a soul. The Torah says that God blew the breath of life into his nostrils and it became a living soul. The commentaries teach that this means that the human became an articulate being. The human being is a composite of body and soul, and the fusion of the two essential human components is by way of speech. Shalom, Mike. Ashley G., always good to have you with us. The faculty of speech is what elevates a person to human status. I've heard it say reason. Speech was given to humanity in order to reveal to others the thoughts and emotions expressed from the human soul. Since a human being, no matter how holy and wise he may be, cannot create a human soul, a golem does not have the ability to speak. Mike, if you're following along in your copy, we're on page 228. We're going to start the second paragraph on page 228. Golem influence. Stories of golems have been so widespread throughout the centuries that even some non-Jewish scholars have said that they have helped inspire Mary Shelley's invention of Frankenstein. Albert J. Lavallee, one of the founders of the Film and Media Studies Department at Dartmouth College, writes that Mary Shelley may have been familiar with the medieval legends of the artificial man who becomes both a protector to the Jews and possible scourge. Some make the claim that the Golem inspired the Golem character in J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. While these speculations have never been truly verified, the concept of the Golem is thoroughly embedded in the cultural history of the Jewish people. Golem makers. To those holy men in Jewish history who were proficient in the mystical texts and who were exceedingly righteous, creating a golem was not a particularly fantastic feat. For someone of this caliber, creating a golem is no more impressive than planting an apple seed in the ground and then watching the apple tree grow. For these unique individuals, influencing supernatural energies in the spiritual realm of life was no different than manipulating the natural energies in the physical realm. For apples, there is one method; for golems, another. Biblical golems. Some of the Torah commentaries suggest that certain key biblical characters created golems. The earliest golem creature was created by Enosh, the grandson of Adam. The people in his generation approached him asking, "What is the name of your father?" To which he responded, "Seth." "What is the name of your grandfather?" "Adam," he replied. "And what was Adam's father's name?" they asked. "He had no father," Enosh explained. "Hashem created his form from the earth and then blew into his nostrils a living soul." They said to Enosh, "Demonstrate how it was done." Enosh then took a handful of dirt and formed the image of a man, and the evil spirit entered into his nostrils and he became alive. The people declared this being as their God, and they believed in it. This golem entity led many astray. Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Creation, is a cryptic Kabbalistic work about how creation occurred and is attributed to our forefather Abraham. Some Torah commentaries write that Abraham himself also used these formulas to create golems. In the story of Joseph and his brothers, who were ostensibly jealous of him, we find that Joseph was inclined to give a negative report of some of the activities of his brothers were engaged in. The commentaries say that these claims were mistaken because Joseph hadn't realized that golems were involved, not his brothers. There is also a legend about Ben Sira, who was portrayed as the son of the prophet Jeremiah. There are sources that say he made a golem. The story goes as follows. Ben Sira wished to study Sefer Yetzirah. Then a heavenly voice went forth, "You cannot make him such a creature alone." He went to his father Jeremiah. They busied themselves with it, and at the end of 3 years, a man was created to them, on whose forehead stood the word emes, as on Adam's forehead. Then the man they had made said to them, "Hashem alone created Adam, and when he wished to let Adam die, he erased the aleph from the emes, and he remained mes, or dead. That is what you should do with me, and not create another man, lest the world succumb to idolatry in the days of Enosh." The created man said to them, "Reverse the combination of letters by which he was created, and erase the aleph and the word emes from my forehead," and immediately he fell into dust. Talmudic golems. The Talmudic sage Rava studied Sefer Yetzirah, and from this information created a golem. Rabbi Zira recognized it as a golem and not truly a human being, and returned it to dust. Even with his deep Kabbalistic wisdom, only Hashem can endow a soul to make this creature into a true human being. The Talmud also mentions the creation of an animal by the same means. Rav Chanina and Rav Oshia would sit together every Friday and learn Sefer Yetzirah. Through their learning, a calf would be created, and they would eat it for their Shabbat meal. Interestingly, these incidences were mentioned very matter-of-factly, without any fanfare or bewilderment. The righteous individual tapping into and utilizing the spiritual realms was looked upon as a given. More recent golem creators, Rabbi Shimon ibn Gabriel, an 11th century poet and Jewish philosopher, is said to have created golem maidservants. Rabbi Avraham ibn Ezra is created with creating a golem. And he gives his sources down below for those of you that have a copy. Furthermore, it is said that Ibn Ezra created a golem in the presence of Rabbi Yaakov ben Meir, Rabbi Tam, and declared, "See what powers Hashem has put into the Hebrew letters." Rabbi Tam then returned the creature back to its original state of clay. Rabbi Shmuel ben Kalonimus Hasid of Speyer was one of the first leaders of the Hasidai Ashkenaz movement, is said to have created a golem to accompany and attend to him throughout his journeys across Germany and France. Rabbi Avigdor Kara of Prague is documented to have made a golem in the 15th century. Rabbi Elihu, the Baal Shem, was a Polish rabbi who served as chief rabbi of Chelm in the 16th century. His great-grandson, Rabbi Yaakov Emden, writes that he created a golem but destroyed it after fearing that it would grow too big and cause damage. While doing this, a golem scratched his face. Perhaps the most famous golem story is that of the Maharal of Prague, which will be elaborated upon below. There's an account told about the Vilna Gaon. He was well-versed in Sefer Yetzirah prior to his bar mitzvah, and he set out to create a golem. During this endeavor, he was made to understand that he should not continue because he was too young. Over the centuries, there were even notable sources outside of the Jewish community that attested to these practices. In the 17th century, Samuel Brenz relates in an anti-Jewish pamphlet the sorcery used by the Jews in their creation of Hamor Golim, an image of close human resemblance, which involves animating by whispering or murmuring an incantation. There is mention of Jewish golem creations in an influential Latin letter written by Christoph Arnold to the Christian Hebraist Johann Christoph Wagenseil in 1674. After reciting certain prayers and observing certain fast days, they make the figure of a person out of clay, and when they have pronounced the tetragrammaton, the image comes to life. Although the image cannot speak, it can understand what is said to it. He also made specific mention of the golem of Rabbi Eliyahu Baal Shem. Clearly, the golem theme had widespread notoriety. Shalom, Zakiya. Always good to have you with us. Golems in Jewish law. There are fascinating legal implications that arise from these creations, and they have been discussed by various rabbinic scholars throughout the centuries. These include questions such as whether or not it is necessary or to ritually slaughter a calf created from mystical formulas. Such a cow could be used for the commandment of Eglah Arufa. Does killing a golem constitute murder? Can a golem be created on the Sabbath? There is likewise interesting discussions in Jewish legal text as to whether a golem can count in a minyan. The vast majority of Jewish legal authorities answer that a golem may not be counted, but the various reasons as to why are fascinating to consider. This topic is even discussed in some of the more recent compilations of Jewish law, which is particularly interesting as these only address topics that are relevant to today. Rabbi Yosef Rosen, the Rogat Shover Gaon, classifies a golem with a very unique Jewish legal status, saying it is not in the category of a real thing. In other words, it is not legally classified as part of any existing category of forms, animal, human, or anything else. and the commandments do not apply to it. It is through this lens that the above questions would be answered. The formula for creating a golem. Aside from the figures in Jewish history who actually created golems, there were many who wrote about the strategies for creating them. At the end of the 12th century, there was a reawakening of interest in the golem concept and the techniques used in creating one. Rabbi Yehuda Hasid and Rabbi Eliezer of Worms were two leading sages of the Hasidai Ashkenaz, a highly influential and mystical group in medieval Germany. They both wrote commentaries on Sefer Yetzirah. Rabbi Eliezer recorded a technique for creating a golem. First, one gathers dust in the shape of a man, then recites a formula of Hebrew letter permutations, letter combinations with the first half of the Hebrew alphabet enliven it, and letter combinations with the second of half of the Hebrew alphabet renders it lifeless. In a similar technique, one writes the word man or Adam in the dust and then recites the letter combinations, and the golem then forms on its own. In another method, one instead writes the word truth or emes in the Hebrew letters and recites Kabbalistic letter permutations. One then erases the first letter of emes, so the word now spells mes, which is dead, and this once again renders it lifeless. Other rituals to create a golem include reciting combinations of all the Hebrew letters while walking in a circle around the molded dust to destroy the golem. The letter combinations are said backwards and the circling is reversed. Additionally, Rabbi Yosef ben Shalom Ashkenazi, late 13th century Kabbalist, added something unique to this technique, which involved visualization of colors. The Golem of Prague, the most famous golem in Jewish tradition, is the one attributed to Rabbi Yehuda Loew, the Maharal of Prague. This fascinating episode is shrouded in mystery. While there are many versions of the story, what follows is a basic account of what took place. The Jews of Prague were experiencing blood libels and were in real danger. So the Maharal created a golem to protect them. The golem was named Yosiel. Eventually, the golem grew fearsome and violent, and the Maharal was forced to destroy it. The body of the golem was stored in the attic of the Alt-Nu synagogue in Prague, where it could be restored to life if necessary. To this day, the attic is not open to the general public, and some believe that the remains of the golem are still inside. Is the story authentic? There are some who question the historicity of the Golem of Prague. The question is not regarding whether or not it is possible to create a golem, but whether the Maharal created a golem at all. The main reason for the uncertainty is because there does not seem to be mention of it in any of the writings of the Maharal or anyone who lived during his lifetime. Rabbi David Gans, the Tzemach David, one of the Maharal's most prominent students, and author of a biography of the Maharal, makes no mention of the golem. Rabbi Chaim Yaakov David Azulai, the Chida, wrote biographies about great people in Jewish history. He writes about the golem of Rabbi Eliyahu, the Baal Shem, but when he writes about the Maharal, he does not make mention of the golem. Rabbi Mir Perelez of Prague was a relative of the Maharal who lived just over a century after him. He writes in his Megillas Yushin about the two golems of Rabbi Eliyahu Baal Shem and Rabbi Kara, but does not mention the Maharal. The golem of the Maharal is only mentioned in later works. Rabbi Shlomo Yehuda HaKohen Rappaport, a 19th century rabbi of Prague, raises a question of why there is no mention of the Maharal's golems in the writing of his contemporaries. The first printed mention of the Maharal's golem seems to have been in a newspaper in the 1830s, which was roughly 2 centuries after the Maharal passed away. However, it was not really this newspaper story that generated the publicity of the Golem of Prague. The story became well known after it was published in 1909 in a book entitled Niflaos Hamaral by Rabbi Yudel Rosenberg. He was also known for translating the Zohar into Hebrew and later served as the head of a rabbinic court in Montreal, Canada. The book was widely popular and translated into multiple languages. The publisher writes in the introduction that the book was copied from a manuscript that was hidden in the Royal Library of Metz, claimed to have been originally written by Rabbi Yitzhak HaKohen Katz, the Maharal Katz, the son-in-law of the Maharal. Although it is generally regarded in academic circles as a hoax, there has never been a scholarly study devoted to examining this specific issue. The same publisher, just a few years later, put out a book about the breastplate of the high priest. The story was a work of fiction. The story in Nifleos HaMaharal also shows signs of fiction with discrepancies in events, anachronistic terms, and the fact that there does not seem to have been a royal library of Metz. There is evidence that Rabbi Rosenberg himself openly acknowledged that these books were works of fiction. He wrote historical novels and short stories to inculcate Jewish values and provide an alternative to the proliferations of German and French novels available. On the other hand, even if Rabbi Rosenberg's book was compiled as historical fiction, it does not necessarily mean that the Maharal did not make a golem. Rabbi Rosenberg's book popularized the story of the golem, but that does not mean it had no historical basis. Some scholars suggest reasons as to why the golem story was not recorded by the Maharal or his contemporaries. Additionally, even prior to the first printing of the story in the newspaper in 1837, there is mention of an oral history of golems of Prague. These stories date back at least to the latter part of the 18th century. Moreover, Rabbi Yosef Shaul Nathanson, the Shaul Miyashiv, went to Prague and wanted to go to the Altnu synagogue where the golem lies. The Gabbai told him that before Rabbi Yeheskel Landau, the Noda B. Yehuda, went up there, he fasted and he went to the mikveh, and when he wrapped himself in the talis and in tefillin and went up, he came down and he said that no one else should go up there. Rabbi Yosef Yitzhak Schneerson, the Rebbe Rayetz of Lubavitch, visited the attic of the Altnu synagogue in Prague. This is recorded in contemporary documents. The writings of his successor, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, according to one account, when asked, the Rebbe Rayetz chose not to respond. According to another account, he reported that he saw what remained of the golem. Fascinating. And he gives his source. In a copy of a handwritten note by the Lubavitcher Rebbe, he records that he heard from the Rebbe Rayetz that he had seen the remains of the golem in the attic of the synagogue, and he cites where and which pages. Interesting. Shalom, Johnny Riggs. Good to have you with us. The greatness of the Maharal is beyond any question, and several sources document his knowledge of hidden Torah as well. Even though the contemporaries of the Maharal did not openly mention his golem, there are some possible hints to it in their writings. Rabbi Tzvi Ashkenazi, the great 17th century sage known as the Chacham Tzvi, quotes the Maharal and refers to him as the one who made use of the divine influence, as is well known. Rabbi Tzvi Elimelech Shapira of Dinov, a great 19th century sage and Kabbalist, writes, "It is known that the words of the Maharal of Prague were uttered with divine intuition, and that he used to make use of the Sefer Yetzirah. It is uncertain exactly what making use of the Sefer Yetzirah is referring to specifically, but could be used to bolster the idea the Maharal created a golem." Benjamin McKay, you can buy this book. It's by Mosaica Press. You can find it on their website, mosaicapress.com. Just type in the title, A Jewish Guide to the Mysterious. But we've already had a lot of people that have purchased copies on Amazon at a lot cheaper ticket, which is under $8 actually for a hard copy. Phenomenal work. I mean, like I said, I paid over $80 Canadian for mine, shipped right by Rabbi Taylor himself, and the author assigned it for me. Nice to always have an autographed copy. I've been putting off reading it, though, since I got it 6 months ago. At any rate, there is a famous quote attributed to Rabbi Meir Arik, author of the Sheshuvos Imri Yosher, that is unknown whether the Maharal actually created a golem. However, to have created a student of the caliber of the Tosafos Yom Tov is certainly a greater wonder. Finally, it is worth concluding the words of a contemporary Jewish educator, Rabbi Moshe Einstadter, who rephrases the entire premise of the question too. Did Maharal in fact create such a being? However, as to whether the master, who so clearly saw the antecedents of the material world in an ideal spiritual one, and how the former was determined and formulated by the latter, and who moved so freely and intimately from one level to another, whether he could have created a golem is no matter for debate. And that's the end of that chapter, which, we were able to get through very easy. But there you go, folks. Such a unique concept. You know what? I might be able to even rip through our next chapter in the mysterious soul we break into. Would you folks like me to continue? I think if I go for the next hour, I think I can cover the next chapter, which is on the soul, immortality, and the afterlife. Shall we do it, folks? Come on, somebody give me a yay or a nay. Just checking my Facebook comments. Nobody game? Shall I keep reading, folks? What do you think? Mike, what do you think? Okay, Jay Vanston says, yeah, keep reading. Okay, so we're going to bust into right now the soul, immortality, and the afterlife. Now, this is, I think, a real critical baseline chapter, especially for those that have come out of Christianity. You need to flush the old and get rooted in what the Torah really says. So let's just rip right through this. Okay. All right, Johnny, thanks. The soul, immortality, and the afterlife. All right. In conjunction with belief in Hashem, one of the foundations of Judaism is a belief in the immortality of the soul and an afterlife. This is a logical necessity for one who believes in divine justice, as it resolves the apparent suffering of the righteous, or in common vernacular, why bad things happen to good people. In other words, a fundamental Jewish belief is that there is another world where everything will be meted out and judged appropriately. While the oral Torah is clear on the subject, the written Torah being the outline of Jewish tradition and instruction manual for this world, it does not mention outright the details of immortality and the afterlife. All right? A rational approach to the soul. Definite knowledge of the soul and its immortality cannot be achieved in this world. All right? As this would eliminate free choice and reward and punishment, which are fundamentals of Judaism and the purpose of creation. However, there is good cause to believe that man is a dualistic combination of physical and spiritual, that man has a unique soul, and that it continues on after the demise of the physical body. Consciousness. Before elaborating on the idea of the soul, it is important to note that even the idea of full human consciousness is a scientific enigma. Human consciousness has been referred to as one of the greatest of miracles. Its emergence and the growing complexity of the brain are irreconcilable with the naturalistic world perspective. Evolutionary theory holds that only those structures and processes that significantly aid in survival and are developed in the natural selection. What survival value or effect could consciousness have? What does consciousness have that neural signals and physical brain activity do not? Sir John Eccles, Nobel laureate neurophysiologist, suggested that many of the scientific theories of human nature and development of consciousness denigrate the value of humanity. It's just reductionist to electrochemical interactions. He calls the contemporary theory of evolution defective in this regard. He says, it is of the greatest importance to science that there be from time to time a critical examination of established theories, particularly when they tend to harden into dogmas. I'm in agreement with that. The amazing success of the theory of evolution has protected it from significant critical evaluation in recent times. However, it fails in a most important aspect. It cannot account for each one of us as unique self-conscious beings. He writes, complete theory of evolution must account for the emergence of consciousness, since consciousness is the most complex phenomenon and of an entirely different qualitative level than any other phenomenon. The theory that can account for it will presumably be far more sophisticated than the present-day origin theory, as consciousness involves elements of self-reference and holism, is the source of subjectivity, and crosses the mind-body divide. Presumably, the theory of it will do so as well. As such, the complete origin theory will possibly take on features more reminiscent of some of the underlying themes of the Eden account. Where is the real you? When describing the soul, it must be made clear that it is distinct from the human mental capacity, as that is only a single facet of the general human spirit. Neurobiology has revealed an ethereal mind that transcends the physical brain, supporting the idea of a soul. Acclaimed philosopher of science Sir Karl Raimund Popper put it this way: I intend to suggest that the brain is owned by the self. To try and better understand this, consider your reflection in the mirror. The current image of yourself is different than your 15-year-old self or your 5-year-old self, and also very different than what your 80 or 90-year-old self will look like. Which one is the real you? Moreover, the vast majority of the cells in the body are constantly replenishing themselves. So over the course of several years, you actually are a physically different person, in a manner of speaking. You also feel and think very different at the moment than you did when you were 15 or 5, and will likewise feel and think differently when you are 80 or 90. It follows then that a person is different emotionally and intellectually as well. The human being is perpetually changing physically, emotionally, and intellectually. This begs the question, who is the real you? Is it your current self? How about your childhood self? Perhaps it is your elderly self. Where is the consistency or permanence that remains the same throughout your life? What is the essence or core of who you are? There is no part or aspect of the physical human being, neither bone nor organ or limb, that can be pinpointed as the true self. There must then be an essential self, a unified, animating force of all bodily capabilities, an ethereal source of thought, feelings, and willpower, a core of the human experience and being. The soul is the spiritual self, the real I that inhabits the body and that operates through it. The soul is the enigmatic human behind the human. The Zohar explains it like this: concerning the creation of the human, it is written, You have clothed me with skin and flesh. What then is the human? Merely skin, flesh, bones, and sinews? No. The essence of the human is the soul. The skin, flesh, bones, and sinews are only a superficial covering, like garments, but they are not the human. Beyond physical pleasures. Logically, only a non-corporeal entity should be able to comprehend infinite or refined spiritual concepts. No part of the physical human being can grasp the non-material concepts behind things like art, music, and philosophy. Consider music, for example. People often find that they can be profoundly moved by a certain piece of music. Where does this deep reaction come from? How are tears of joy or sorrow or feelings of inspiration generated from the combination of some chords? A German poet, Heinrich Heine, described music as a strange thing, saying, I would almost say it is a miracle, for it stands halfway between thought and phenomenon, between spirit and matter, a sort of nebulous mediator, like and unlike each of the thing it mediates. Spirit that requires manifestation in time, and matter that can do without space. We do not know what music is. Judaism explains that music is an expression of the soul. Listening to music can have an intense impact. Likewise, playing music is described as revealing dormant aspects of the personality. Right on. Shirley Ann Lindbergh, so good to have you with us. Haven't seen you here for a while, but nice to have you with us as well. We are souls having a physical experience, for sure. Okay. Music is a tool that can lift one's spirits, generate and enhance joy, help one overcome temptations, and can even bolster intelligence. The therapeutic value of music is written about in specific journals and used in practice in modern society. Many therapists will listen to music with a patient and talk about the feelings or memories that it evokes. And studies have shown a benefit from music therapy in treatment for autism, dementia, learning disabilities, strokes, and pain management during labor and in birth. The refined appreciation experience from music reaches a deeper place than the biological aspect of the person. Furthermore, people feel good when they overcome a desire to do wrong. Additionally, the pleasure of doing kindness for another or the pleasure of intellectual discovery transcends the fluctuating superficiality of the material world and is instead enjoyed solely by the spirit. These non-physical experiences and pleasures attest to the fact that there is a non-physical entity within that seeks them. Interesting. Search for meaning and transcendence. Throughout his life, man is constantly in search of things that have nothing to do with his physical makeup. The thirst for enlightenment and meaning is rarely truly quenched, yet it is ceaselessly pursued with tremendous enthusiasm and dedication of time and money. As the esteemed psychiatrist Viktor Frankl said, in the healthy human being, there is a will to meaning, and it is this that sets him apart from the animals. One would never hear an animal ask himself, does my life have meaning? But this question is asked by Homo sapiens. How can the human being need transcendence? If transcendence has no actuality in the fabric of existence, what about a thirst for meaning? Could the thirst be there is nothing to satisfy it? One cannot help but smile at the irony of the atheist who declares the human experience in the cosmos to be devoid of meaning. And in the same breath, that person declares their unending passion and commitment to investigating and understanding the human condition in the cosmos. Yeah. The heart of the average person desperately seeks that which is beyond the mundane. Animals do not have these cravings. When an animal's biological function or drive is fulfilled, it stops. Rabbi Abraham Twersky, who is also a clinical psychiatrist specializing in drug addiction, asks the following question. Why is addiction unique to human beings? He answers that addiction is born out of human discontent. Ultimately, it is due to a lack of spirituality. The human being attempts to overcome discontent, trying to fill a spiritual void with physical objects or pleasures. These give very temporary relief, but they never satisfy the deeper spiritual craving. The individual is left as miserable as ever and tries to indulge in more in a futile attempt to feel better. The only true solution is to treat the spiritual void. Until the addiction is dealt with on this level, the person will never gain sobriety. Interesting. There is a dissatisfaction that drives a spiritual giant to accomplish greatness and uplift mankind, and this cannot merely be the product of natural selection. It serves no biological purpose. Where do these yearnings for something higher come from, if not from something higher that resides within? The Midrash gives a parable related to this insatiable thirst. The book of Ecclesiastes writes, "All of the labor of man is for his mouth, yet the soul will not be satisfied." And that's from Ecclesiastes 1:7. To what is the relationship between body and soul comparable? To a commoner who marries a princess. Everything that this street urchin brings to her is as nothing, because compared to what she had in the palace, all is worthless. To him, it carries much importance, but she could not be any less interested. Likewise, this is the case with the body and soul relationship. The body is very impressed by food, money, and fancy clothing, yet the soul is only concerned with things that really matter. The transcendent pursuits of the higher order that she, or the soul, was the spiritual palace while in the spiritual palace on high. So Shirley Ann's read that book by Viktor Frankl. Excellent. Sadly, the average person will endeavor on an unending journey, striving to find lasting pleasure in the physical. Try as they might, what they seek is not something that the body or mundane world can even provide. The further one removes himself from faith, the more he lowers himself into despair. Carl Jung, the Swiss pillar of modern psychology, relates, "During the past 30 years, people from all the civilized countries of the earth have consulted me. I have treated many hundreds of patients. Among all my patients in the second half of life, to say over 35, there has not been one whose problem was not that of finding a religious outlook on life. It is safe to say that every one of them fell ill because it had lost that which the living religions of every age have given to their followers. And none of them has been really healed who did not regain his religious outlook." Interesting. A deep and pervasive aspect of the human condition is the longing for ethereal concepts like justice, freedom, or truth. Oftentimes, the quest for these ideals can even be accompanied by certain willingness to give one's life for their attainment. It seems ironic that nature could generate, preserve, and perpetuate a trait that is self-defeating and counterintuitive to the struggle of organisms for their survival. Could nature really produce an organism containing probable predispositions towards its own destruction? Would nature produce a creature that cannot live on merely by biological life? What a question. Would nature produce a creature that cannot live merely on biological life, but must search a higher for a reason for its existence? Could nature, which is devoid of intelligence, personality, vision, and spirituality produce and preserve these very qualities in the organisms that it generates. These concepts certainly point to an elevated realm within a person that transcends nature and at the same time to a creator who makes possible the emergence of these qualities which uplift the mortal out of the mundane. The subliminal whisper. In the best-selling book Tuesdays with Morrie, I love that book. I think I've read it a few times. Morrie, a sociology professor nearing his end, says, everyone knows they are going to die, but nobody believes it. There seems to be a part of the human system coming from a subliminal whisper within that enjoins us to confidently live life as though it will last forever. This itself attests to the soul's existence and immortality. For this state of mind and ingrained outlook is an inseparable part of the human experience. That book was great, Tuesdays with Morrie. Jewish soul expression. Perhaps the strongest proof of the Jewish soul and its inseparable connection with the Almighty can be found throughout the Jewish history in the willingness of so many people to sacrifice their lives for Hashem. Even under threat of harsh torture, Jews have refused to give up their religion and betray Hashem. Self-sacrifice is found among all cultures and creeds throughout human history. A wide variety of people, whether brave and praiseworthy military patriots or crazed and condemned religious zealots, have been willing to die for a cause. Intense convictions, be they personal passions or the product of brainwashing, can climax with the giving of the very self. What is being discussed here is significantly more mind-boggling. In Jewish history, there are literally countless examples of the unlearned and non-believing Jews giving their lives rather than renouncing their faith. One such classic example is found in the city of Shpola, Ukraine, where there is a tombstone engraved with these words: the grave of the holy martyr Yosel the thief. Who was Yosel? In the 18th century, there lived a degenerate thief who was caught burglarizing a church. His punishment for committing such sacrilege was to be burned at the stake. The judges of his case declared that if he would convert to their religion, he would only be charged with theft and hence receive a much lighter sentence. This thief, a denier of Hashem and dissenter his entire life, replied that he would surely die rather than renounce who he was. Even as the fires consumed him, he refused to change his decision. Where does such devotion and willingness to embrace Hashem on the highest level come from, if not from an essential, ever-connected but dormant soul? In the more recent past, there is a story about a bleak Yom Kippur in Auschwitz. One of the guards realized that the inmates were still making a point to fast, despite the fact that they were already completely emaciated. The guard singled out one Jew and said they had a present for him, a delicious ham sandwich. By chance, the Jew they singled out was a secular Jew who had never fasted on Yom Kippur and also regularly enjoyed ham and non-kosher foods. Here was his chance to finally have a meal, something nearly impossible to find. The secular Jew, who was the product of secular family, refused to eat the ham. The brutal guards began to beat him viciously. When he continued refusing the sandwich, they beat him even harder, and when they finished, they left him for dead in the mud. A few Jews approached the dying man and asked him why he, a totally assimilated Jew, had refused to eat the ham sandwich. He replied, "I have always eaten ham, but never as a Jew. They wanted me as a Jew to eat ham. I could never do that." The body-soul combination in Jewish tradition. Jewish tradition teaches that mankind is composed of a body and a soul. In general terms, the soul is the animating force that separates a living person from one who is no longer living, as there is clearly a difference between the two. Jewish tradition reveals many layers that give meaning to what the soul is and how we should relate to it. The Rambam, who is considered one of the greatest Jewish sages and philosophers of all time, reminds us that the soul is not a combination of any physical elements. He explains that everything in the physical world decomposes, while the soul exists forever. Basic biological animating force. One aspect of the soul, or human spirit, corresponds to the material itself. It is the unnameable force on the biological level that enlivens and animates the body. On this natural or base plane, there is little perceivable difference between the vitalizing force of human beings and animals. This aspect of soul is called the base soul, or natural soul, or animal soul, as it is the base force that makes one alive. It is this energy that makes the heart beat, lungs open and close, and enables all of the other basic operations of a living person to function. This aspect of the soul, being identified with nature, is self-serving, essentially centered on its pleasures and preservation. The godly aspect. In addition, there is another aspect of the soul described whose beginnings are distinct from everything else in the universe. All other creations are described in the Torah as being spoken into existence by Hashem, and God said, "Let there be so and so." Adam is described as being formed from the dust of the ground, and that Hashem blew into his nostrils the breath of life. The Zohar elaborates that one who blows from within. The Torah is metaphorically contrasting the air expenditure that occurs during speech and that which occurs during expulsion of a deep breath. In all other creations, Hashem only invests his creative energies on an external or superficial level in creating and sustaining them. However, with the godly soul, he gave his innermost and most essential life force. In Jewish philosophy, the soul is referred to as an actual piece of Hashem, that divine spark. This aspect of the person yearns for higher things, which are outside of its own self-interests. Applying the soul, choosing the godly path. Classifying the soul as godly helps us appreciate why it is so hard to define. Human beings can relate to physical terminology, things of this world. Godly means outside of that realm. Jewish tradition teaches that one soul force within us is completely about self-serving and self-preservation. The other force within is directed outside of the self. These two forces are mutually exclusive. To have a connection with the godly, the sense of self must be deflated. I guess that's the ego, yeah. The imagery of the godly soul as breath demonstrates the incongruence of the selfish path and the godly path by way of an analogy. The breath, like the soul, is usually unseen. If one breathes into a mirror, they can see their breath in the form of fog that forms on the mirror. The more one breathes, the less one sees of themselves. In other words, when godliness is being pursued, self-awareness fades, and vice versa. This, in short, is the story of our lives in this world, an ongoing struggle between choosing the self-serving path or the godly path. In Judaism, choosing the godly path, embracing the godly aspect of soul, is the means of attaining spiritual health. Rabbi Chaim Vital, the primary student of the Arizal, who passed down Lurianic Kabbalah, explains that just as the body requires certain foods to maintain its health, the soul likewise has a special system for maintaining its spiritual health. When one seeks guidance in health issues in life, one consults his doctor. The doctor knows his specific bodily makeup, its unique strengths and weaknesses, and can make a proper prescription based on his knowledge. The soul likewise has a prescription for its spiritual health. Judaism teaches that the soul is the Torah is the Jewish person's prescription for life. The Jewish tradition explains that there is a total of 613 commandments in the Torah, including 248 positive instructions and 365 prohibitions to avoid. These correspond with the 248 spiritual bones of the body and the 365 tendons or sinews. Completion of the full spectrum of commandments enables a full, healthy soul. And for those of you that were with us during the 8 chapters of the Rambam, I think the Rambam really talked well about noting an ill soul and then how to deal with the illnesses of the soul. In other words, the means by which the soul experiences the good for which Hashem created the world is through fulfilling the commandments. The soul is rewarded or punished in the afterlife based on its adherence to the mitzvot while in the body. Every soul of Israel needs to be reincarnated many times in order to fulfill all 613 commandments of the Torah in thought, speech, and action. Wow. The nations of the world keep the soul healthy through their adherence to the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach, which uphold a moral code in this world. Through this, they refine and uplift themselves and the world around them. All people are charged to fulfill their purpose in this world by living up to their soul potential. This is essentially done by choosing the godly path and minimizing the influence of the base, self-concerned nature of the animal soul. And that's the end of that chapter. I think you could have gone on a little bit more. There's so much to say. I'm trying to remember an exact Jewish phrase, when discussing, that which is dead can never be alive, and that which is alive can never truly die. When they describe the distinction of the soul and the body, but I think he got into a lot of reality there about the psychoanalytical side of the matter, that the natural minded, say, evolutionary biologists cannot explain. And the more that the yearning of humanity, we'll touch on near-death experience, not tomorrow, but Monday. Yeah, today's Thursday. I do have another broadcast tonight with Rabbi Pinchas Levin of Wisconsin. He's been on a real kick. I don't know if anybody saw his last message on positive hatred. I think that this was probably one of the most profound lessons that gives a cure for a lot of the derogatory behavior that goes on in this world. He called the message positive hatred. It came out August 17th. Encourage everybody to check that out. Beautiful, beautiful message. He's got the actual Torah response to actually overcome the maladaptive social psychological behavior of outgroup derogation, sides where people are, you're not one of us, that baseless hatred. He talks about how to overcome it, which is really, really, really good. Johnny, I'll be back on Monday at noon Eastern time, where we'll get into the next chapter of near-death experience and so on. I think I can read, 30 to 40 pages of this work, in an hour to 90 minutes. And Johnny Riggs saw that positive hatred message. Beautiful message, wasn't it, John? I just thought, because I have struggled with that maladaptive social psychological behavior, being at the brunt of it. Nobody wants to be at the receiving end of being outgroup derogated. When I was in Christianity, I was excommunicated 3 times. It just didn't matter, how much kindness, love I did. There was always some moron that wanted to put a negative spin on it. If I did something kind, somebody would distort or twist it. And I could not understand why. It didn't matter how much I tried to be a repentant or an honest person. People got their hatred on. And I think that Rabbi Levin really touched on something beautiful in there. I watched it yesterday, but I want to watch it again today. It's on my to-do list before I go. Yeah, tonight we'll be doing that broadcast at 9 p.m. Eastern, Johnny, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. That's
7 p.m. for those are Rabbi Levin's in Wisconsin time zone, which is central. So yeah, it's a little different. I hope, yeah, he wants to talk about Noahide's Anonymous, and I think he's really trying to get across a point about that is essential for developing, bonds of community. I'm sure he always makes the message pleasant and purposeful. Even this backdrop I've got here for Rocky Mountain Reading, with the rocks falling down when I did that, I initially designed it work that I did, and so I thought, okay, we'll start these readings, and we did the Book of Job. We've done the 8 chapters of Rambam. We're really burning through this work by Rabbi Pinhas Taylor, which is kind of interesting. Hello, Michaela P. in Germany. Nice to have you with us always. Usually don't see you during the week, maybe on the weekends. We will be live this weekend with Rabbi Chaim Kaufman continuing Pirkei Avot, but we do not have an episode of Beyond the Seven with Rabbi Poston. We're taking a break till well after Sukkot. He's a busy man. So much on the go. It's the holy days are even busier for those busy rabbis in Israel and Jerusalem especially. And I do believe we're back on this Sunday with Rabbi Chaim Goldberg in the Genesis class, which is always exciting. I consider Rabbi Goldberg my rabbi. He's always got kind words and direction to share, and I think he's really, with Genesis, bringing to life the depth of Genesis that you just, I spent 32 years as an adult in Christianity and never heard half of the things out of the book of Genesis that I've heard Rabbi Goldberg share. Just such profound stuff. Last week he really touched on the one way promise of God to Abraham. The covenant between Hashem and Abraham was what Hashem said he would do. It had nothing to do with if. There was no conditions to it, unlike the replacement theologians think in Christianity. They think, oh, they blew it, and so it's ours now, and they don't realize that's theft. Yeah, Sunday with Rabbi Chaim Goldberg is 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. in Israel. Johnny, I hope that helps. Now, I don't know if we're friends, Johnny. I think we're friends on Facebook, right? If we are, if you want to message me on Facebook, John, I will give you the link to the Zoom room for that class if you want to join us on the Zoom room. We get people from all over the planet in the Zoom room. We get people from Italy, people from India, people from the Czech Republic, and a good content usually from South America. Over here, we know the Mike and Angela McConaughey there in the UK. Yeah, so Johnny, if we're friends on Facebook, send me a message, and I will send you the link to the. I haven't caught that message, Johnny Riggs. Who shall live? That I saw that this morning, and I just didn't have time to review it before this reading. I try to make this my time of study or sharing, and hopefully you guys are all enjoying it. I know many of you have bought copies, and I just hope that Rabbi Pinhas Taylor's blessed. I know that he's got his own classes going regularly. I'm going to try and touch desk with him next week and see if we can confirm and lock in a time. Hopefully some of you are writing down questions, because he's touched on the whole concept of the mysterious. I have seen the mysterious, it bothers people if you don't have an understanding of certain aspects of the mysterious. I've seen it bother people like a splinter, that gets in and you can't get it out. It's always nagging and gnawing at you. I've seen people with ideas of the mysterious just get into their mind, and it dragged their life away into ideas of nothingness. Of course, Shirley Ann. Yes, yes, yes. An irrevocable covenant with Abraham and his descendants. But the point being that it was not conditional based on their obedience, like a lot of Christians teach. He pulled it right out of Genesis, and there's no way you can link it to if. It's like if you're making a contract with somebody, I'm going to sell you this for that. There's clear definition. I'm giving you this, and you're giving me that in return for it. There's complete clarity in the book of Genesis, but I just appreciate how well Rabbi Goldberg is pulling this out. So it's rooted in our brains. It's not just a thought as a belief system, but it's rooted in the Torah. Here's the connection, the link, and we can, dig our roots. And you're a sharp lady, Shirley Ann. Appreciate having you with us again today. Haven't saw you for a bit, but I do see you out on social media all over the place, and I wish you well there in Southern Ontario. I was thinking of making a trip there soon. I got family down that way, and I found out I've got an uncle flying out this way the end of the month as well, and he wants to connect. I also made connection with another person in North Vancouver, and it's always a joy, So if we're not friends on Facebook or social media, my name's Dan Barwell. You can reach out to me, and I'd be glad to get to know and chat. If you have any questions about being B'nai Noach, what does it mean? What does it entail? If you want to know more, if you want to have a chit chat with somebody, I'll do my best to make sure your questions are answered properly. And if need be, I will direct you to a rabbi where you can actually make a legitimate connection. We want to see people grow, and we want to see communities grow. So, I keep my proverbial social media door open. You know what? We're going to wind it down for today. I know it's a little bit shorter than usual, but it's always just a joy to be with wonderful people. Hopefully, you guys are enjoying this book, A Jewish Guide to the Mysterious by Rabbi Pinhas Taylor. And it's nice to be with like-minded people, people that love Hashem, and people that want to make the world a better place. And I think that Rabbi Taylor's discussion, really starts to bring to light. I think it really, to talk about the soul. I don't think he got into details on immortality in the afterlife, but just really touched briefly on the soul. But there's so much you can study on the material of the afterlife. I mean, we're all hungry to understand concepts of the world to come. What exactly do they mean by the world to come? What does it entail? I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful concept. I was hoping he was going to get into more, but I'm sure there's still a lot more in this book. We still got over 150 pages, which we will not get through next week, but I'll bet you by towards the end of the book, we get topics like the location of the Garden of Eden. Johnny Riggs, excellent show. I appreciate your encouragement. You're always encouraging, Johnny Riggs. And Shirley Ann, beautiful, beautiful. Well, I appreciate you all. So I wish you all Shabbat Shalom this weekend. Be filled with joy, peace. And we'll be back with Rocky Mountain Readings Monday, okay? Same time on Monday, folks, and we're going to continue with near-death experiences and then maybe even reincarnation if I think we might be able to knock off both. And then we'll be into the mysterious powers section, which, we should be able to knock off near-death experiences and reincarnation. And I think it really comes down to knowing what the Torah has to say. And what I do appreciate most is that Rabbi Taylor has got all his sources in the bottom of the pages. And so there's no reason this book can't eventually go down as a real resource book on the question of the mysterious. Might be a nice book to have on your shelf if you ever get stuck with questions. It give you a lot of topics that you could have what to say with the Torah source. Could be a great, wonderful resource material. I think he's done a wonderful work. I like his logic is pure, and he shines with the intellectual virtue that we came to understand through the Rambam, and it's just beautiful material. So I'm going to sign out for now, folks. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful Shabbat. I will be back with Rabbi Chaim Kaufman this weekend and Rabbi Chaim Goldberg on Sunday. So till then, folks, I'm going to sign out. Have a wonderful, wonderful